Hi, welcome to a new edition of Cracking the Cryptic, where today we're going to take a look at this puzzle, which is a puzzle that one of our viewers has created for us. Martin Kenden wrote in from Germany. He's just 17 years old and most polite, well-mannered, very incredible how good Martin's English is in his second language. So we were really taken with what he'd done, what he created for us, so we thought it was only right that we would try and showcase the puzzle. So this is a sandwich Sudoku, as you can see, and I think Martin got the idea for doing this from Mark's video, where he explained how to create sandwich Sudokus, or how Mark goes about creating them. So let's just have a reminder of how these work. The numbers outside the grid are telling us the sum of the cells that are sandwiched between the 1 and the 9 in the relevant row or column. So if we look at this 20, for example, this is telling us that once we identify where the 9 goes, let's say we found the 9 was here, that would mean these 4 cells would have to sum up to 20. And we're going to use this logic to go through the puzzle. Now, Mark has solved this puzzle. He says it's not too difficult. So if you're new to Sudoku variants, you may well want to give this a go, and you can do that by clicking on the link under the puzzle, and that will take you to our software. You'll see exactly what I'm seeing here, and you can have a go. If you're not subscribers to the channel, by the way, and you enjoy the content, please do consider subscribing. Some of you may be in a position also to sponsor us on Patreon. It's not without reward, actually. We've got our new Patreon reward coming out in the next 2 or 3 days. For those of you who are sponsoring us, it's $2 to sponsor us a month, and for that you get our monthly puzzle, which we handcraft for you. And for $3 you get you not only get the puzzle, you get a video on how to solve that puzzle as well. So we think that's really good value, and it really helps to support us in what we're doing. So anyone who can help, please consider doing it. We really appreciate it. Now let's go. How are we going to do this? So I mean, normally, in order that a sandwich Sudoku has a unique solution, there must always be 1s and 9s in the initial grid, and you can see we've got 3 of those, so that's certainly where I'd start here. And as usual, my big tip for sandwich Sudoku is to label the cells that cannot contain 1s to 9s. So I'm going to grey out cells that can't contain 1s and 9s, just as a visual way of showing that. So if we look at the 20, the minimum number of cells we can use to make 20 would be 3, with a 5, a 7 and an 8. So that means that we know the 9 must be at least to this square. Now there's actually a 9 already in the column here, so it must be at least one more square. And once we get to this sort of position, we then have to sort of do the arithmetic the other way round. And what do I mean by that? Well, we know if there's 20 sandwiched between the 1 and the 9, then as we know, the whole row will add to 45, because if you add up all the numbers from 1 to 9, that's what you get. We know that the outside cells, the cells that are not sandwiched between the 1 and the 9, are going to have to sum up to 15, i.e. 1 plus 9, if the 9 was here, say, that's 10, plus these cells are going to be 30, 10 plus 20, obviously, and 30, or 45 minus 30 is 15. So what's the minimum number of cells we need to make 15? Well, it's 2. We could do 15 with a 7 and an 8. Now therefore we know this square here cannot be a 1 or a 9, because, or it can't be a 9, because if it is, we'd have to put 15 in this single cell, so that's not the case. So we get an extra grey cell here, and in very difficult sandwich Sudoku, every single grey cell will matter, believe me. So let's continue doing this. You can see I've got 9. Well, as we know, the 9 would have to be here, say, or here. We know we need 2 cells to make up 9. We could have 7, 2, 3, 6 and 4, 5. So we know at least 2 cells are going to have to be either side of the 1 here. But we can't have more than 3 cells in the sum 9. 9 can be 2, 3 and 4, so the maximum length of the sandwich here is going to be, or the sandwich filling is going to be 3 cells. So the 9 is in one of those 2 cells, and these 2 cells are grey. Let's Let's look at the 9 now. So this is an interesting one actually, because there's an 8 in the column. So that the 8 here cannot be a single digit 8, and therefore this cell cannot be a 1 or a 9, because the implication of putting a 1 here would be that there would be an 8 there. So we know there must be 2 cells. Now actually, we know we cannot have 3 cells to make 8, because to do that we'd need a 1. So this square actually is going to be a 1, and that gives us our first actual digit. Let's continue putting in numbers. Again, we get an interesting thing in the central box now using the 8, and this 8 on the left hand side. So again, we know actually we're going to need 2 cells here, because there's already a 9 in the box for one reason, but also even if this 9 wasn't here and we tried to put a 9 here, this 8 would rule out an 8 from this square. So we've got these 2 squares possibly adding up to 9, and the 9 in one of these 2 positions. So these 2 cells are not 9. Okay, now let's try and use the 14 here. 14 can be 6 and 8, but this can't be a 1, because there's already a 1 here, so we can fill that in. Now 14, believe it or not, can be 4 cells, because 2, 3, 4 and 5 do add up to 14, so we don't really know much about where the 1's going, except it's in one of those 3 squares. Maybe we'll highlight that like that. Now let's try and use this 9 now. So we've got 12 in the column, so 12 must be at least 2 cells, and it can be as many as 3, so it's 2 or 3, so that would place a 1 here. That's possible in theory, isn't it? These 2 definitely can't be 1s and 9s, so this cannot be a 1 or a 9. Now looking horizontally now to use this 9, we need a 2 next to the 9. Now it can't come here because this cell obviously can't be a 1, so in fact we're going to get quite a lot of information from this. We're going to be able to go like that, and you can see the sort of, each time we manage to get a 1 or a 9 in the grid, we immediately make this sort of flurry of progress using the other direction. So now we can use this 12 on this 1. Now we know this can't be a 1 or a 9. We know these 2 squares couldn't be a 1 or a 9, so the 9 could go here in theory. Aha! But actually no. If we did put a 9 here, where would we put the 9 in this 3 by 3 block? And this is the advantage of this notation. I can immediately see I can't have a 9 in either of these 2 squares. Therefore this square cannot be a 9. And this is huge now, because now we know that the 12 total in column 8 must be 3 cells, because it can't be 4. Therefore this square must be a 9. This square is not a 9. And we know that we need the 3 cells to add up to 12 using a 5. So the only way of doing that is with a 3 and a 4 as well. So we're actually going to be able to put a 3 and a 4 into these 2 squares, and we're going to make a lot of progress now using the 31 look in row 8, because once we've got the 9 here, we can, because it's a big number, it's best to focus on the numbers outside the sandwich. So 31 plus 1 plus 9 is 41, so I need 45 minus 41 is 4. I need to put 4 outside the sandwich. Well, the only way of doing that is with a solitary number 4, and that has to go here, look. This is going to have to be the 1 in order to make enough room. This is a 4, and all of these squares are grey. Even that one. Okay, and now we can do simple Sudoku. 1, 1. This has got to be the 1 because of the grey cells we've already labelled. And we've got 26 here. Now that's, so 26 plus 10 is 36. We know the outies have to sum to 9. These 2 cells clearly can't be a 9. This can't be a 9. Ask yourself the question, could this be the 9? And the answer is no. That would imply these 3 cells have to sum to 26. Well, the maximum you can get to with 3 cells in a sandwich Sudoku, as part of the sort of sandwich filling, would be 8, 7 and 6, and that adds up to 21. So actually this square is going to have to be 9. We can now grey out the rest of the cells in this 3 by 3 block. Now if we look at this block, look, all of a sudden we can just immediately write in the 9. It's the only available square. We need this to have 15 into these two squares. Look, between the 1 and the 9, and there's an 8 there. So actually that must be 8 and 7, like that. Let's carry on filling in grey numbers. Again, we've got the greys totally finished in the top left-hand corner, therefore this square must be the 9. This square must be the 9. And with these sandwich Sudokus, you do get a very... this square has to be a 9 by Sudoku again, because of the limitations of the grey areas. This is going to have to be a 9. This will be the 1 because of the 8 in the block here. Look, that's going to be a 1. But, we need a 1 in one of these two squares. And you can see actually it's going to have to be, because of this 6 in column 9, we're going to actually be able to put in a 2 here, a 1 here, that resolves the 1 at the top. And yeah, with these sandwich Sudokus, they very much are a two-stage puzzle. The first stage, which is we've now completed, is to get the 1s and the 9s sorted out. This is a huge, huge step. The next stage, maybe there's 3 stages. The next stage is to use the sums as much as we can once we have the 1s and the 9s placed. So how can we do that? We can look at things like this 26 here in row 6. We know the outies must sum to 9. This square therefore must be a 2. Let's just go through and make sure that we get all this down. This 8 cell here, or 8 sum, in 2 digits without using a 1 or a 2, well that's going to have to be 3 and 5 then. That resolves this 3-4 combination here. That's going to have to be in that way around. These 3 squares now are going to have to be 4, 6 and 8. So let's pencil mark those in. This 14 sum here in 2 cells, that's going to have to be 6 and 8. It's the only way to do it. 7 in 2 cells, well, we could do that in 2 ways. We obviously can't have 1, 6, but we could have 2, 5, and we could have 3, 4. And neither of those is ruled out by the 6 and the 8 yet. So the 15 we've used, the 9, this 9 is important. Look, this certainly can't be an 8 or a 6. So that must be a 4. That gives us a 6 and an 8 there. This square here now must be a 3, and that's a 5. So the 9's now used. The 26, well, we can actually use that now because we've already got 13 from this 5 and 8. So these two are going to have to add up to 13 without using 9, without using 8. So that's going to have to be 6 and 7. And you can see that interacts with this 6, 8 here. So 7 and 6 like that. We've used the 26 now. Now if we look down at the 8 sum in column 4, we can't use 1 and 7 obviously, but here we can't use 2 and 6 either because of the 6 is already appearing in rows 3 and rows 4. So this must be 3 and 5. And I can't quite, there may be a way of resolving that, but I'm not immediately seeing it. So we'll just carry on. This 8 here gives us a digit. We can immediately place this 8. That gives us an 8 and a 6 as well. 3, 5, must be a 3 in one of these two squares. 0, oh this must be a 4, almost missed that, that was bad. 4 in one of these two squares, again not seeing anything terribly useful, and we've used the other totals. So now we're almost getting to the last stage of a sandwich Sudoku, which is where you just have to do Sudoku. Now this must be an 8 by simple Sudoku, look, with these 3 8s that we've already got in the grid. We need 5, 6 and 7 down column 2. Well, this square here can't be a 6 or a 7, so it's going to have to be a 5. These two squares must now be 6 and 7. This is a 5 by normal Sudoku because of the 5 there. And these three squares are obviously 2, 3 and 4. Now, have we definitely used... Ah, no, look, we haven't used this 10 yet. So we've got this square limited to 2, 3 or 4. So this square is going to have to be 8, 7 or 6. Well, it can't be 8, so therefore this can't be 2. And this needs to be a 7 or a 6, or 6 and 7, depending on how you like to go about saying your numbers. This is 2, 3 and 4 up here. And this 20 sum we can use as well, can't we? Because we've already got a 4 and a 6 in the sandwich filling. So this square must be, and well, these two squares add up to 10, which tells you this isn't a 5. It's going to have to be 3, 5. This must be a 7. Therefore, this is a 7. Therefore, this is a 7. That's just normal Sudoku. This 7 and this 7 interacting on the central 3 by 3. This is a 5 by simple Sudoku. Therefore, we've got a 6 and an 8 into these two squares. Therefore, this square here is going to have to be an 8. No, not an 8. What am I talking about? 2. 2, 2, 2, yes. 4 and 8 locked into these two squares. Oh no, what is going on with my scanning? No, this is a 4, so this 4 here and this 4 here. 3 and 6 into these two squares, so this is a 3 and this is a 6. 2 and 3 into these two squares, that's now resolvable. This becomes 4, this becomes 6. Let's remove the 4s as the possibility from these two squares. 2 and 3 like this because of the 2 here. This must be a 3. Still don't quite know how to resolve the 6 and the 8 into these two positions, so I'll label them now. And 6, 7, 8 into these positions. So we can now go 7, 6 and 8. That resolves this square. Look, this must be 7, this must be 6. Now this must be 7, and this must be 4. 2 and 5 at the top. That's now resolvable. 2 and 5. Let's tidy up the pencil marks. Ah, this square, look, that's going to have to be 2. Now, have we used all of these sums? I think we probably have at this point. Got 6, 8 pair in column 7, so this should be a 4. And you can see that's very helpful. That resolves this 4, this 3. Therefore, this is a 3 because of the 3 already appearing in column 8. 5, 6, and 8. So this square should be a 6, 6, 8, 6, 8, 5. These three squares should be 2, 7, and 8. So let's put those in. 7, 2, and 8. Check. And it's all looking good. So that's how to do the puzzle. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And yeah, hats off. 17-year-old created that from scratch using one of our videos. Very impressive and really enjoyable. Thanks for watching. We'll be back soon with another edition. Cracking the Cryptic.